Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? This one is going to have you hooked, I can already tell.
Oh, yeah, this one's a wild ride.
So we're looking into the death of Amanda Perold. Back on February 3rd, 2020, her husband Seth, a police officer, called 911, said she, committed suicide.
But there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye. Right from the get-go, there were just too many things that didn't add up.
And that's where Sheriff Howard Sills comes in, right? He just didn't buy the suicide story. And honestly, after digging through the 48 Hours episode called The Death of an Officer's Wife, neither do I. There are so many twists and turns. We really want to unpack all the evidence with you and see what you think. Was it suicide, tragic accident, or something way more sinister?
Yeah, it's a real head-scratcher.
Okay, so let's start with the crime scene itself. What was it about the scene that immediately raised red flags for Sheriff Sills? I mean, do most suicide scenes not look like, well, a suicide?
Not this one. This was way too, I don't know, staged. Like someone was trying to make it look like something it wasn't.
Okay, so paint us a picture here. What did they actually find when they got to Amanda's house?
So picture this. Amanda's lying flat on her back, legs together, arms by her sides, hands cupped.
Like someone had posed her.
Exactly. Almost too perfect, right? And that's a massive red flag. It's called staging, and it usually means someone's trying to cover their tracks.
Chilling. Okay, so if her body's seen staged, what about the gun? You know, the one Seth used, the .380. Where was that?
Not near her. It was distance away, and the magazine was ejected. Think about that for a second.
So you're saying someone shoots himself, then somehow manages to eject the magazine, and they end up separated like that?
Not likely at all. Plus, Sheriff Sills even showed how the gun would have to eject another bullet after the magazine falls out, right? It just doesn't make sense.
Right, and I remember from the 48 Hours episode, there was no blood on Amanda's hand or sleeve.
Huge red flag. You'd expect a lot of splatter with a close-range gunshot to the temple. You just can't shoot yourself like that and not get blood on your hand. It really makes you wonder if someone tried to clean things up.
Okay, so we've got a staged body, a gun that mysteriously ejected its magazine, and no blood splatter. And on top of all that, just 6 days before her death, Amanda called 911. She had Seth arrested for domestic violence.
Yeah, just 6 days. You can hear the fear in her voice on the recording. It's heartbreaking.
So what did she say in that 911 call?
It's chilling. She says, "It's my husband. He's putting his hands on me." And the dispatcher knew Seth, apparently. They said something about him being over the whipping upon her ass.
Wow, so this wasn't a one-time thing. People knew about the abuse.
It sounds like it. This was a pattern.
It's just awful. With all these red flags, you'd think the medical examiner would rule this a homicide, right? I mean, come on.
Well, here's where things get even more complicated.
Okay, hit me. What happened?
They ruled it a suicide.
You're kidding. Right, with all those red flags, how was that even possible?
Medical examiners, they often focus on the angle of the gunshot. And a close-range shot to the temple, they see that, they often automatically think suicide. So even with all the other weirdness, that one detail might have swayed them. It just goes to show forensics isn't always a slam dunk.
That's tough to accept. So they brought Seth in for questioning, right? What happened there?
Oh, that interrogation is fascinating. For one, he's all over the place with this story. First, he says he didn't touch Amanda's body. Then he's like, oh, well, maybe I hugged her. Changing his story, trying to make it fit the suicide narrative.
That's so shady. Wouldn't you be, completely shocked and devastated if you found your spouse dead? Why would he be so concerned about a narrative?
And this is creepy, he keeps using the word executed. Like Amanda executed herself. Who talks like that about a loved one's suicide?
No one. Executed. That sounds so cold, so calculated. Like he's talking about a planned hit, not a tragedy.
Right. Like he's trying to distance himself from what happened, or maybe subconsciously revealing something. Who knows?
Okay, so we've got the weird crime scene, a questionable ruling from the medical examiner, and now a husband who's acting super suspicious and using disturbing language. Was there anything else that pointed to Seth's guilt?
Well, get this. They found a note in Amanda's nightstand, supposedly written by her, recanting the domestic violence accusations.
Oh, come on, seriously. What was so off about this note?
The language. She supposedly wrote she was willing to take any punishment she deserved. I mean, that's just weird. Why would you say that when you're trying to clear things up? Plus, the handwriting is perfect. Even margins like it was typed up and copied, not something you'd expect from a genuine, heartfelt note.
Sounds like someone forced her to write it. Dictated it, maybe.
Yeah.
This case just keeps getting more and more suspicious. So did investigators talk to anyone else who knew what was really going on between Amanda and Seth?
They did. They talked to Seth's daughter, and what she had to say, it's just heartbreaking. She saw the violence firsthand, described how Seth would get physical with Amanda, even threaten her.
Oh, that poor girl. I can't even imagine. What did she see?
She said Seth would touch Amanda's nose, like a threat, yelling at her to get out of the house. And this is crazy. She remembers a conversation where Amanda told her that if Seth lost custody, he would shoot me dead.
That is so chilling. It's like Amanda knew. She knew she was in danger, and she was trying to shield her daughter from the worst of it. Did she ever try to document the abuse, like on her own?
Actually, yeah, she recorded a video on her cell phone of an argument with Seth.
Oh, wow. That must be intense. What does it show?
It's bad. You can hear Amanda saying, "You videotape all the expletive when you hit me and smack me," and Seth's response, "Hit you! Expletive choked me 8 times."
Wow. That's pretty damning. It sounds like Amanda was trying to gather evidence, to protect herself. It's just so sad that she couldn't escape before it was too late. So, with all this evidence stacked against him, what did Seth's defense team do? How could they possibly explain all of this away?
Well, that's what we're going to dive into next. This is where it gets really interesting.
I know, right? You'd think with all that it'd be an open and shut case. But Seth's defense team, they got creative.
Oh, I bet they did. So what was their angle? How do you defend against all that evidence?
Well, instead of tackling the evidence head on, they tried to spin a different story. Like Seth was a victim, caught in some big conspiracy.
Conspiracy? Seriously, who was supposedly conspiring against him?
Yeah.
And why?
They pointed fingers at Sheriff Sills, said he had it out for the local police chief. Seth was just collateral damage in this supposed power struggle.
So basically, they were trying to discredit the whole investigation by saying the sheriff was biased. And Seth, being a cop, got targeted because of that. Did they have anything to back that up?
Not really. It was mostly insinuation, trying to poke holes in the investigation, saying Sheriff Sills twisted the evidence to fit his story. And they played up Seth's clean record as a cop, the loving husband and father, devastated by his wife's death. So playing on the jury's emotions, hoping they'd see him as a good guy wrongly accused. But what about the physical evidence? The staged body, the gun and magazine, no blood splatter. How did they explain all that away?
They tried. For the body, they said maybe it moved naturally after death. Gun and magazine, oh, that could have happened when the first responders got there.
Come on. That sounds pretty weak, especially with everything else pointing to Seth. What about his daughter's testimony? How could they dismiss what she saw?
That was a tough one for them. They tried to downplay it, saying maybe her mom's family influenced her or she misremembered things because of the trauma.
So basically blaming the victim. Did anyone push back against that?
Amanda's sisters did, big time. They testified, talked about Amanda's loving nature and how terrified she was of Seth, shared stories about how he controlled her, isolated her from everyone. They wanted the jury to see Amanda as the real victim.
That must have taken so much courage. Did the 48 Hours episode show their reactions to all of this?
Yeah, you could see the pain, the anger. They were furious that the defense was smearing Amanda's reputation, making her look like the bad guy. They kept saying she was trying to escape a dangerous situation, and they brought up the cell phone video as proof.
Right, that video. Did the defense even try to address that?
They downplayed it, said it was just one argument taken out of context. All couples fight. It doesn't mean Seth was abusive.
So we've got the prosecution with all this evidence and the defense trying to discredit everything, twist the narrative, and minimize the abuse. Sounds like it was a pretty intense trial.
Yeah, it was a real battle of 2 different versions of the truth. And in the end, it came down to what the jury believed.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What did they decide? Did they see through all the smoke and mirrors?
We're going to find out as we continue our deep dive into the death of Amanda Perel.
Okay, I gotta know. What happened? Did they buy Seth's story?
They didn't. After all the evidence, all the testimony, the jury found Seth Perel guilty of murder.
Wow. That's a relief, to be honest. Sounds like justice was served. Amanda's family, they must have felt vindicated.
Oh, absolutely. You could just see it, the weight lifting off their shoulders. They fought so hard for Amanda's voice to be heard, and the jury believed her.
Did 48 Hours show how both sides reacted?
Yeah, it was powerful. Amanda's family, there were tears, relief, a sense of closure. But Seth's family, they were in shock. They kept saying he was a good man, that he'd never hurt her.
It's amazing how 2 families can see the same person so differently. But in this case, the evidence was pretty overwhelming, right?
It was, and I think the jury's decision sends a message. Domestic violence won't be tolerated. Not even when the abuser is a cop. No one's above the law.
What was Seth's sentence?
Life in prison, no parole. The judge was very clear. This was a horrific crime. Seth abused his power, betrayed the trust people put in him as an officer. He needed to be off the streets.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's so tragic that it took Amanda's death to make that happen. We talked about Amanda's family speaking out during the trial. Did they keep doing that, advocating against domestic violence?
They did, yeah. Turn their grief into action. They're amazing. Speaking at events, working with shelters. They even started a foundation in Amanda's name to raise awareness, support victims.
That's so powerful, taking something so awful and turning it into something good, honoring Amanda's memory, helping others.
They're pushing for laws to change, too. Better protection for victims, holding abusers accountable. They're making a real difference.
It shows you, even in the darkest times, you can find a way to make things better. Amanda's legacy lives on through them. I hope her story encourages other people to speak out, to get help.
Me too. And if anyone listening is going through something similar, please reach out. There's help out there. You don't have to go through this alone.
Well, this has been quite a deep dive. Insightful, but man, so heartbreaking. It's a reminder that domestic violence is real, it's dangerous. We need to recognize the signs, get help before it's too late.
And it shows the strength of the human spirit. Amanda's sisters are an inspiration. Turning pain into purpose like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully their work, their fight for a world without violence will continue to make a difference.
It will. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Let's remember Amanda's story, and let's all work to make the world a safer place for everyone.